What do you do when your life falls apart so completely that even breathing feels like too much effort? When the man who promised to love you forever chooses silence over you, and the career you poured your soul into crumbles like ash between your fingers. When you walk into a room full of people who know your name, and you have never felt more invisible in your life? You have two choices. You can hide. Or you can show up. Lena Hart, 32 years old. Award-winning editor. The kind of woman who stood her ground when everyone else in the room sat down. 3 days ago, her fiancé walked out. 2 weeks ago, she was fired, not for failure, but for doing the right thing. She had refused to kill a story exposing financial fraud, and the powerful people she threatened made sure she paid for it. Now she sat at table 12 of the most glittering wedding in Chicago's social calendar, alone. The chair beside her, empty. A constant reminder of everything she had lost. She almost didn't come tonight. Her mother's voice had been the only thing that pulled her from the quiet of her studio apartment. You cannot hide forever, Lena. Staying home alone will only make you feel worse. Her mother didn't understand. Nobody understood. Because being alone, at least, meant she didn't have to see the pity in people's eyes. The Rosewood estate had transformed into something from a fairy tale. White roses climbed crystal pillars reaching toward cathedral ceilings. Candlelight drifted across silk-draped tables in hues of champagne. The string quartet played something elegant near the dance floor, where couples moved in perfect, effortless synchronization. Lena stood at the entrance clutching her small beaded purse like it was the only solid thing left in a world that had turned to quicksand beneath her feet. She spotted her table number on the seating chart. Table 12. The family table. Because heaven forbid she be placed anywhere she might actually escape the concerned glances and careful questions. Her sister Rebecca saw her first. Lena, you made it. The enthusiasm was real, but Lena could see the relief underneath it. Rebecca had probably spent the last hour fielding questions. Where is Lena? Is she okay? Should we be worried? I said I would come, Lena said simply, managing a smile. The table welcomed her with gentle warmth. Her parents. Her brother Marcus. Rebecca and her husband Tom. And 2 empty chairs, one for Lena, and one for the plus one she no longer had. How are you holding up? Her father asked, his voice low. His hand found hers on the white tablecloth, warm and steady. I'm fine, Dad. Really? It was a lie. They both knew it. She wasn't fine. She was catastrophically, irreparably not fine. 3 days ago, David had stood in what was now his apartment and told her he couldn't do this anymore. Couldn't handle her intensity. Couldn't marry someone who had just lost her job because she refused to play office politics. Never mind that those office politics meant covering up financial fraud. Never mind her spotless, award-winning record. Never mind that doing the right thing had cost her everything. David had looked at the wreckage of her career, and decided he wanted no part of her. The conversation at table 12 drifted carefully between polite topics. Her brother asked about job prospects. Her sister watched her with fierce, protective eyes. Her mother tried to steer everything toward the beauty of the wedding, the flowers, the food. And then, her mother stopped mid-sentence. Something over Lena's shoulder had caught her gaze. Something that shifted her expression from warm to alarmed in a single breath. Lena turned. A man was crossing the ballroom. Tall. Dark hair cut precisely short. A face carved from marble, with dark, intelligent eyes that held the kind of absolute control that made you feel he had already calculated every outcome of every scenario in this room, and had chosen his next move accordingly. But it was the suit. Black. Custom made. It fit him like armor. Like a weapon. And he was walking directly toward her table. Who is that? Rebecca whispered. No one answered. Because no one knew. But Lena could see it, recognition flickering across the faces of other guests. Not the pleasant kind. The cautious kind. Mixed with something that looked, unmistakably, like fear. The man reached their table and stopped. His eyes, dark, utterly controlled, locked onto hers. "Is this seat taken?" His voice was quiet. Cultured. With the faintest trace of an accent she couldn't quite place. Italian, maybe. Or the echo of old money and older traditions. Before she could answer, before anyone at the table could react, he pulled out the empty chair and sat down with the fluid grace of someone accustomed to doing exactly as he pleased. The silence at the table was deafening. "I'm Marco Duca," he said, addressing the table but keeping his attention entirely on Lena. "I apologize for the intrusion. I saw a beautiful woman sitting alone, and thought perhaps she could use some company." He'd done his homework. He knew her father's work in commercial real estate. He knew her mother's charity work at the Children's Hospital. He complimented Rebecca on an article she'd written. He discussed market trends with her father with the casual expertise of someone who genuinely knew what he was talking about. And then came the question Lena had been dreading. "And how do you know Lena?" her mother asked, her eyes sharp and careful. This was it. The moment he would be exposed as a stranger. Where someone would politely ask him to leave. Where her humiliation would be complete. But Marco turned to Lena slowly. And in his eyes, beneath the polished exterior and the iron control, she saw something unexpected. A question. An offer. A lifeline thrown to a drowning woman. "Lena and I are old friends," he said smoothly. "Aren't we?" Lena had spent 3 days crying in an apartment she could barely afford. 2 weeks sending resumes to people who would never call her back. This entire evening being the object of whispered pity. She grabbed that lifeline with both hands. "Yes," she heard herself say. "We are." The lie hung between them, fragile and dangerous as spun glass. Marco's expression didn't change. But something flickered in his dark eyes. Approval. Or amusement. He reached for her hand on the table, his fingers warm and impossibly steady as they closed around hers. "I apologize for being late," he said. "I was detained by business. But I'm here now." The implication was unmistakable. He was her date. Her +1. The partner she was supposed to have. The pity at the table evaporated instantly, replaced by curiosity, confusion, and in Rebecca's case, frank, burning speculation. Later, as the string quartet gave way to a DJ and couples flooded the dance floor, Marco leaned close and murmured against her ear. "You're doing well. But you're holding yourself like you're waiting for an attack." "Maybe because I feel like I am," she whispered back. "I don't even know who you are. Why are you doing this?" "Because you needed help," he said simply. "And because I wanted to." "That's not an answer. It's the only one I have right now." A pause. "But if you want me to leave, say the word. I'll make an excuse about a business call, and you'll never see me again." Lena looked at him. Really looked at him. Beneath the polished surface and the careful control, she saw something she hadn't expected. Something lonely. Something that understood, completely, intimately, how it felt to sit surrounded by people and still feel utterly, devastatingly alone. "Don't go," she said quietly. "Not yet." His answer was a slow, deliberate smile. "Then dance with me." On the dance floor, one hand settled at her waist, the other captured her hand against his chest where she could feel the steady rhythm of his heartbeat. "Why me?" The question escaped before she could stop it. "There are dozens of women here. Why did you choose me?" Marco was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was soft but absolutely certain. "Because you were sitting at that table with your shoulders back and your head high, even though I could see it was killing you. Because you showed up tonight when it would have been easier to hide. Because you have the kind of strength that most people never develop in an entire lifetime. He paused. And because when I walked up to your table, you didn't look at me the way everyone else in this room does. How do they look at you? Like they're afraid. They danced through song after song. And for the first time in weeks, maybe months, Lena forgot to feel invisible. But then a man appeared at the edge of the dance floor. Older. Silver-haired. Expensive suit. And a smile that didn't reach his eyes. Duca. The man's voice carried something predatory. I didn't expect to see you here. Marco's entire demeanor shifted. The warmth evaporated. When he stood straighter, it was with the controlled stillness of a predator acknowledging another predator's presence. Castellano. The tension between the two men was so palpable that nearby guests had stopped their conversations to stare. Bold moves lately, Castellano continued. Some might say reckless. It's what got your father killed, if I remember correctly. The temperature in the room seemed to drop 10 degrees. My father made mistakes, Marco said quietly. I don't intend to repeat them. Castellano's gaze slid to Lena. Something in his expression made her skin crawl. Pretty girl. Friend of yours? Marco moved. Just a slight shift in position, but suddenly he was standing between Lena and the older man, blocking his view of her completely. She's none of your concern. Castellano studied him for a long moment. Then he smiled, and walked away. Later, standing at Lena's door in the cool night air, Marco held her gaze with those unflinching dark eyes. I wasn't pretending, he said quietly. What? When I told your family we were old friends, that was a lie. But everything else. The way I felt dancing with you. The need to keep you safe when Castellano looked at you. The fact that I don't want this night to end. He shook his head slowly. None of that was pretense, Lena. Her heart hammered. I don't understand. You don't even know me. Not yet. He smiled, slow and genuine. But I'd like to, if you'll let me. He leaned down, and instead of a kiss on her lips, his mouth brushed her forehead. A gesture somehow more intimate than anything else could have been. Lock your door, he murmured. And don't open it for anyone you don't know. Then he was gone. Standing alone on her doorstep, pulse still racing, Lena realized something. For the first time since her life had fallen apart, she felt something other than despair. She felt alive. And that, more than anything else, should have been her first warning. Loudspeaker call to action, end of part 1. If this story is already pulling at your heart, you are not alone. Thousands of listeners across the world have felt exactly what Lena is feeling right now, the terror of starting over, the ache of loneliness, and the terrifying, electric hope of something unexpected. Hit that like button right now and drop your city in the comments. I want to see how far this story travels. And make sure you're subscribed, because part 2 is where everything truly begins, and nothing will be what you expect. She told herself it was just one night. Just a dance with a beautiful stranger at a wedding where no one was supposed to notice her at all. She told herself it wouldn't change anything. She was wrong. Open book. The story continues. At 7:30 the next morning, Lena's phone buzzed on her nightstand. Marco's name glowed on the screen. Good morning. Did you sleep well? She stared at it for a full minute before typing back. Not particularly. Too much on my mind. The response came immediately. Same. I have meetings all day, but I'd like to see you tonight. Dinner. She should have said no. She should have thanked him for his help and politely ended whatever this was before it became something she couldn't walk back from. She typed, yes. Where and when? I'll pick you up at 7. Dress comfortably. No restaurant name. No negotiation. Just an instruction, and the quiet expectation that she would follow it. She should have been irritated. Instead, she opened her closet. Rebecca called that afternoon, her journalist's instincts already working overtime. Lena. Marco Duca. I did some research. Nobody wants to talk about him, but the ones who would say his name with this kind of careful respect. The kind you use for someone dangerous. I know, Lena said. And you're still seeing him tonight. A beat. He's picking me up in less than an hour. Lena. Because when I'm with him, Lena said quietly, I don't feel invisible. And I felt invisible for a very long time, Rebecca. Her sister was silent. Then, okay. But text me when you get home. I don't care what time it is. Marco took her to a small Italian place in Little Italy, not the kind of exclusive restaurant with month-long waitlists that she'd expected, but a neighborhood spot with checkered tablecloths and photos of someone's grandmother on the walls. Giovanni, the owner, greeted Marco with a bear hug and looked at Lena with open, warm delight. And who is this beautiful woman? Marco, finally. You need to feed her better. She is too skinny, Bella. I'm working on it, Marco said dryly. Over homemade pasta and his grandmother's secret sauce, Marco told her the truth. My father was Antonio Duca. He ran import operations on the north side until someone put 3 bullets in him when I was 16. I rebuilt everything after he died. New alliances. New methods. Most of what I do now is completely legitimate: real estate, investments, international trade. But some connections can't be severed. Some debts are inherited. Like Castellano. Like Castellano. So you're telling me you're not entirely legal, Lena said carefully. I'm telling you I operate in spaces where the law is sometimes negotiable. His dark eyes met hers without flinching. I don't hurt innocent people. I don't deal in drugs or trafficking. But I won't apologize for the power I've built, or the methods I sometimes have to use to maintain it. He reached across the table and covered her hand with his. I want you, Lena. I've wanted you since I walked into that ballroom and saw you sitting there, pretending your world hadn't shattered. But I need you to understand what being with me means. What does it mean? It means real security. It means people may watch you to get to me. It means trusting my judgment about threats even when I can't explain everything. He paused. It means accepting that I'm not a safe choice, even if I'm the right one. Lena looked at him for a long moment. I should be running, she said finally. Every self-preservation instinct I have is screaming at me to thank you for a lovely evening and never see you again. But you're not going to. No, she admitted. I'm not. Which probably makes me exactly as reckless as you said. Or exactly as brave, he said softly. Then Marco reached beneath the table and produced a folder. I had my people look into titanium marketing solutions. Lena's breath caught. She opened it slowly. Inside, financial records. Internal emails. Evidence of the fraud she had tried to expose. But more, new layers she had never uncovered. The scheme extended to multiple firms. High-ranking executives. Millions lost by ordinary investors. This is enough to trigger a federal investigation, she whispered. It is. I have contacts in the FBI's white-collar crime division. They'll take this seriously. He watched her flip through the pages. Your name doesn't have to be on it. But the work will be done. The criminals will face consequences. And you'll know you saw it through. Lena set the folder down slowly. I want my name on it, she said. I want everyone who blacklisted me to know I was right. I want my former editor to see that his cowardice didn't bury the truth. Marco's smile was slow and deeply approving. Then that's exactly what we'll do. That Saturday, he drove her north to his estate. Glass and stone and clean lines set against natural surroundings. Gardens that stretched in every direction. A home, not a showplace. Books on shelves. A well-used espresso machine. Family photos, old and faded, in places of honor. "This is what I can offer you," Marco said as they stood on the terrace, watching the sun sink below the gardens. Protection. Privacy. A place where the outside world can't reach you. "That sounds like a cage," she said honestly. "Only if you see it that way. I see it as freedom, the freedom to live without looking over your shoulder. The freedom to pursue your work without fear. The freedom to be yourself without apology." He stepped closer. "You haven't given me your answer yet. About whether you're certain." Lena had spent the entire week thinking about little else. Every logical argument said she should walk away. Every instinct said she would regret it forever if she did. "I'm certain," she said quietly. "I've been certain since the first night. I just needed to understand what I was being certain about." Marco closed the distance in 2 strides. His hands framed her face. And when he kissed her, really kissed her, for the first time, it wasn't gentle or tentative. It was a vow. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, he rested his forehead against hers. "You're mine now," he said. "That means I protect you. My enemies become your enemies. My resources become yours. No one touches you, threatens you, or hurts you without answering to me." "And what do I become to you?" she asked. His voice dropped to something raw and unguarded, the voice of a man who had spent years building walls and was only now, in this moment, letting someone past them. "My weakness. My anchor. The one person in this world who can destroy me simply by walking away." He shook his head slowly. "I've spent my whole life being invulnerable, Lena. You make me vulnerable. And somehow, I don't mind." Sparkles the beautiful ending. 3 months later, Lena stood before a senior FBI investigator, her evidence folder open on the table between them. The story was published, not in the magazine that had fired her, but in 4 major newspapers simultaneously, under her full name. The executives behind Titanium Marketing Solutions were arrested within the week. Her former editor issued a public apology. 3 other editors who had blacklisted her reached out within the month. She didn't take all of their calls. She had a new office now, a home office in the estate, where morning light poured through floor-to-ceiling windows and peony arrangements from the garden sat on her desk. Marco had kept every promise. On the evening the first arrest was announced, he found her standing at the terrace windows, watching the sunset. He wrapped his arms around her from behind, his chin resting on her shoulder. "How does it feel?" he asked. She thought about the woman who had walked into that wedding reception clutching her purse like a lifeline. The woman who had sat at table 12, hollow and invisible, waiting for the evening to be over. "Like I got myself back," she said quietly. Marco pressed his lips to her temple. "You never lost yourself, Lena. You were just in a season of waiting to be found. Sometimes life strips you of everything at once, your job, your love, your confidence, your sense of who you are. And in those moments, every part of you wants to hide. To disappear. To wait for the storm to pass in silence. But Lena's story reminds us of something powerful. Showing up, even when it costs you everything, is never wasted. She showed up to that wedding when she could have hidden. She said yes when she could have refused. She stood for the truth when it was easier to let it go. And every single time she chose courage over comfort, the universe quietly rearranged itself in her favor. The right people don't appear in your life when everything is perfect. They appear when everything is broken, because only then can you see who truly sees you. Your integrity is not a liability. It is your most valuable asset. Never let anyone, no employer, no partner, no circumstance, convince you otherwise. And sometimes the most dangerous choice is also the most alive one. Loudspeaker final call to action: subscribe and engage. If this story moved you, if Lena's courage reminded you of your own, I want to hear from you. Drop a comment below with the one line from this story that hit you the deepest. Your city. Your thoughts. Your own story of showing up when it was hard. Stories like this one only reach people because of you, sharing, liking, and subscribing so the next chapter finds its way to someone who needs it. Hit subscribe now. Turn on notifications. Because the next story is already waiting, and I promise you, it is worth staying for.